Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Miami Hurricanes getting it done in the transfer portal, landing former Oklahoma cornerback Jaden Davis from the 2019 class. This is a really big get, and you're starting to see just the depth of talent that's in the transfer portal. You were getting a guy who started over 20 games for Oklahoma, over 100 tackles. He has an interception, a guy that's going to be an immediate impact dude in that secondary for Miami. And again, we're going to be talking a little bit about what Jaden Davis brings to the table, potentially some other targets for Miami to take a look at in this transfer portal as the portal's closed and now guys are just finding their destination. Now, before we get into it again, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support you guys have shown, especially the Miami Hurricane fans. It's been a fun ride on the recruiting trail for the Miami fans. You guys have been awesome supporting the boys. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'm going to kick this one off to you. Let's start with the Jaden Davis commitment and then get into some potential targets that Miami could go shopping for in the transfer portal to round out this roster heading into 2023.
And I think that's the kind of a key for Miami is they getting guys who are proven players and who can help them win now, because you really don't want to see another year go by at the similar level it was last year. And just if you can fill this roster out and kind of recapture some of that momentum that they had in the 2023 recruiting cycle and get that energy back that I think is still there. It's like with Cristobal there, the energy is going to be there. The ability to recruit is going to be there. The ability to drive talent. But they just got, I think, again, last season, certainly very disappointing. So guys like a Jaden Davis, and I'm sure they're not done, that it's going to be important to bring some guys in to be a much more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, Mario Cristobal just crushing Cuban college. Like he's the most active recruiter at the college football level. Like this dude wakes up at 4 a.m. From the stories I've heard, has like a massive whiteboard and just starts firing out text messages to recruits. Mario Cristobal is going to pique the interest of a lot of recruits. This Miami program right now is piquing a lot of interest, and you're not necessarily seeing the commits in this 2024 class, but you're seeing a lot of really talented dudes come on campus. I think the big part is like this 2023 season is big because a lot of these top recruits, they want to go to programs that are winning football games. And that's why you take a look at who they got in the transfer portal. It's a lot of veteran guys, Matt Lee, Javion Cohen. You add Jaden Davis into that list, Francisco Mayoga, Branson Dean, a lot of guys who played at the college football level. You know what they're bringing to the table, and kind of some reinforcements to help have a little bit more successful season in 2023 and hopefully kind of entice some of these top 2024 targets that, hey, Miami's the place to be if you want to go win some championships.
And that's pretty much it. Again, I think if they have a much improved season and they get that energy back and back rolling, and I will say this commit season is probably going to be a little lighter for Miami just because they did bring a monster class in 2023 with a lot of talent. But I think combined that with, I think you're going to see some of those freshmen play because they got a lot of really, really good ones. You're going to get a good crop of transfer portal guys so far. And you're right. They've been doing it pretty well, getting some of these vets. And if they can, again, if that's what they need to do. They just need to be a much better team this year because, again, everything else with what Miami has going right now all favors what they can do in terms of recruiting, aside from maybe a disappointing start to the on-field performance.
Yeah, and I like what they've done in the transfer portal. Like, it's a decent amount of quantity of players, but it's also like really quality players who started at their previous schools and are going to come in, whether they have 1 or 2 or 3 years of eligibility left. Like, you look down this transfer portal list, like, most of these guys are going to be playing significant snaps for Miami. You got
Miami didn't need a giant class. Like, their team really wasn't that bad. They just
Josh Gaddis.
The offense was really, really bad, and obviously they handled that by getting rid of Josh Gaddis. And
good.
If you can just kind of, again, the coaching I think is going to be better. I don't think it could be much worse.
I'm a Shannon Dawson guy. I mean, anything's going to be better than Josh Gaddis. What I do want to talk about, though, speaking of Shannon Dawson, it's a great pivot point here, is if you look at this Miami roster, it's pretty damn complete. Like, you got a good starting quarterback. I'm optimistic about this offensive line. The defense has a lot of talented dudes, whether they're young or veteran guys. Like, it's a talented group. That one position that I think Miami still needs to add a body in, one, I think they could add some depth to the running back room, right? Like Henry Parrish, I like him. Chaney's been a guy that's been banged up. Mark Fletcher, like, depending on how he looks in the summer, you might feel good about that running back position as a true freshman. The wide receiver position, though. And we're taking a look at 2 guys here that potentially Miami, they've been linked to Miami, and would be kind of massive targets for Miami in the portal. Let's start out with Xavier Henderson, who was a former top 100 recruit coming out of Miami, Florida. He ends up committing to the Gators, a dude that's super talented, especially coming out of high school. He's a big frame. He can push the ball down the field vertically. I think that would be a phenomenal addition for Miami. And he was on campus taking his visit the same time that Jaden Davis was. You might see a connection, and I think that would be a massive land for the Hurricanes in this portal.
And you met like that was probably the one position that just wasn't even close to where it needed to be last year. And it was injured a lot, so that certainly didn't help. But even when everyone was healthy, you just really didn't have that complete list of wideouts you could go count on. And that'll be huge if they can get an Xavier Henderson type guy. That again, these are just the steps they need to make to being a team that's going to win a lot of games in the ACC, and then just get this thing rolling and get kind of back on that hype train, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, when Xavier Restrepo went down with the injury, like there just was not. I mean, their leading receiver last year was their tight end Will Mallory, who's obviously off to the NFL draft. When you see that stat, you're super concerned about the explosiveness in your passing game. When your tight end's your leading receiver, so again, a guy like Xavier Henderson, the next guy I want to point us to, who just hit the portal last night, and again, as a Michigan fan, I wouldn't mind if Michigan took a look at him. Keon Coleman, a guy that from the 2021 class, he's been phenomenal at Michigan State, and he kind of would complement a lot of what the Miami receivers already do. Like, you have some burners, especially some of the guys you brought in, Robbie Washington, Nathaniel Joseph. Go get a guy who's big, physical. He plays basketball at Michigan State as well, who can play above the rim, and a guy like Keon Coleman, who I remember watching him in the big house last week, just catching it over our cornerbacks.
He's going to be a quarterback's best friend because you just don't need to be that accurate with him. He's got a monster catch radius. Those contested balls he comes down with them. And when Michigan State really couldn't get anything going against Michigan all game, the only times they had it was go up Keon Coleman, make a play. And frankly, he was doing it and held him in it in the first half. And then obviously Michigan took over, but still you got a guy who, when things break down a little bit or you're kind of in a rut, and Miami found themselves in a lot of ruts last year, you got an alpha dog who will go make a play and kind of unjam you, if you will.
Yeah, and like Keon Coleman's a proven guy. I mean, catching for over 700 yards in that Michigan State offense last year, like that's pretty damn impressive. Like you had a guy like Jaden Reed who was struggling in that offense. He went day 2 in the NFL draft. That Michigan State offense stunk. Keon Coleman was one of the only reasons that football was moving down the field. He's a guy that's a proven dude. And when you talk about this Miami pass catching group, it's not even like I think the talent's there. Like they have some young talent. I think a guy like Colby Young, from what I'm reading in the practice notes, looks like a dog. Jaleel Skinner at the tight end position looks like a dog, sounds like a dog. It's just they're not proven. They're guys that really haven't been productive at that Power 5 level yet. You get a guy like Keon Coleman who's proven that he can produce at that Power 5 level in the Big Ten. You start feeling a little bit better about this pass catching group that surrounded Tyler Van Dyke. And again, Shannon Dawson, that ball is going to be moving all around the yard. You got to have a lot of playmakers of different varieties, and Keon Coleman would add something that Miami, quite frankly, don't really have right
now. And for him, it's not a bad landing spot. I know Van Dyke didn't look great last year, but you can't ignore the fact that in 2021 we were talking about a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Nothing worked on offense last year. Kind of cleaned house, obviously, and it still feels to me like a very attractive spot for offensive weapons because you're going to get a lot of playing time, you're going to get your chances, and you're going to be with a quarterback who you don't question. And Keon Coleman, that's why he's leaving Michigan State, is he has a lot of questions about who's going to be throwing the ball.
Yeah, and you don't have that with Tyler Van Dyke, and I think it's going to be an attractive landing spot for a lot of these transfer wide receivers as well, because you know you're going to get your opportunity. You mentioned, why is Keon Coleman leaving? 1, that offense stinks, and 2, who's throwing you the football? Shannon Dawson is going to have that air raid approach. You have a guy like Tyler Van Dyke who's an NFL arm. Like, he didn't look like an NFL arm last year. It's we call that the Josh Gaddis effect right there. Like, just like he's going to take a good quarterback, make him look bad. I think Tyler Van Dyke is going to be a guy that thrives under Shannon Dawson. And guys like Keon Coleman, Xavier Henderson, there's a couple other guys. Akari Franklin transferring from UTSA would be a really nice get. And again, as a Michigan fan, I'm keeping my eye on the wide receivers that are popping in the transfer portal. I think Miami fans should be doing the exact same thing. We'll close it on that. And again, something to monitor. I feel like Xavier Henderson, that just makes so much sense. He's from Miami. You're really excited about this new Shannon Dawson offense. That one would make a lot of sense. Again, appreciate you guys checking us out. Of course, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.